Bali is wild. Oh my God. Yeah, I recently saw like a bunch of photos of the Philippines, Singapore, where else was it? India and stuff like that, where it's just like, there is nothing stopping you from just running your own cable. There's something called a toning wand for detecting tones when you're trying to figure out which wire does what. It will also hum and pick up other random electrical signals and just so you can hear them basically. If you held that up to that, you would just hear an orchestra and it would be amazing. After seeing some posts about fake SSDs just being one flash drive, so I opened one of my fake ones to check. Wait, one sacrificed tool and slightly damaged pocket knife later. What did you do? A micro SD card hot glued to a circuit board. Yeah, that's how a lot of these things are. Yeah, if you don't know the difference between a micro SD card and an SSD, there's a bunch of differences, but the main one that I think is the most important for everyday users is read writes. There's a certain read speed and a write speed for SSDs that's like dozens of times faster than a micro SD card. It depends on the card, blah, 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 blah. And there's also a read write limit for solid state media. That read write limit is a lot lower on micro SD cards because they assume you're going to take a bunch of pictures or video or stuff like that and then copy it off. You're not going to be doing stuff like writing operating systems logs to it and constantly, when you play games or stuff like that, there's databases and stuff like that involved that are lots of read-write operations. All that kind of stuff is what SSD and hard drives are made for, and that's why you can't just use a micro SD card as a hard drive for a long time. Like you can use it, and there's like adapters for older machines where you can use an IDE connector for the compact flash card and run entire OS off that. You can run entire OS off USB drives, but over the long term, you're using up read writes. However, you can get a really big micro SD card, stick it in an SD case, say it's an SSD, sell it as a fake one, and you end up with garbage. What lovely garbage. I'm sorry the garbage damaged your pocket knife. I have no idea what it required to open. Jesus. No wonder the Wi-Fi at our school is crap. Okay, this falls under, they didn't tell us we needed Wi-Fi here, and we had to put Wi-Fi here today. I would still try to at least put it on top of the box or something like that. But it's a school, kids will knock it down. There's actually, one of the computers I have is something called a GoBook 3 by Itronics, and General Dynamics ended up buying them. And the next model of it, actually, one of the things they advertised was a 100-pound pull weight on the Ethernet port. So there's a video of a guy from General Dynamics with an Ethernet cable plugged into this laptop, flinging it around. Mine is a model before that. It's about 2 pounds heavier, made of metal, and was from a former law enforcement vehicle. Long story. But Ethernet cables can actually hold a decent amount of weight because the weight of all of the cables on the front of a switch rack can actually be a decent amount. So this won't affect performance in the short term, even over a year. I've seen places where stuff was hanging for 5-6 years. The clip will eventually get brittle and that'll be what breaks. But at each end, the copper inside of the Ethernet jack is held against itself by the casing of the Ethernet jack. It's not by, you're not going to get a loose connection. It's like basically on or off because of how the teeth and the tines touch each other. You can break the jack, or the jack can be poorly made, and then you have problems. Going into edge cases. My point here is to be nice to school IT, because they're not getting paid a lot, and they are given no budget and just every project under the sun all the time. My brother's mangled laptop setup. He calls it a resourceful build. I had 3 or 4 laptops running, was it a Blender render farm? It was something for when I started learning 3D in college. Yeah, student at a music conservatory with a room full of laptops running Blender, learning soldering, building robots. I built, I think, my 2nd or 3rd robot in my conservatory dorm room. And somehow I ended up in IT. Yeah, my parents really wanted me to go to music school. They really wanted me to do the whole violin thing, but I had the Georgia Tech college view book under my bed since I was 12. And I still remember the page on the robotics department. I ended up in tech anyway. They couldn't keep me away. Genuine question. Why the heck is Costco's server in the middle of the store 50 feet high? Oh, that's easy. Oh, this is actually cool, fun reason. So the maximum Ethernet run length is 300 feet. So if you have a wireless access point or something like that that needs to be in a specific area, specifically in warehouses are awful. Aluminum shelving just rips through wireless signal. So you want that to be as high up as possible. So when you have employees going through the aisles with like inventory scanners, even when they're like all the way as far as possible away from the access point and down inside like walls of aluminum shelving or steel shelving, the inventory scan gun still has a good connection to the nearest AP. For that reason, you're going to need a lot of them, and they need to be distributed over the top of the shelves, and you only have 300 feet to work with. So usually you pick sort of a central area, you put a switch rack there, you're only seeing it at Costco because you can actually see the ceiling, and then you run 300 feet out from that rack, and then you run fiber to the next rack. You usually have a central MDF or a main distribution frame that has all your fiber, and it runs out to all the IDFs. This is basically a mini IDF, which is an intermediate distribution frame. Fiber goes to those, and then all the access points spread out from that point. This way, even if one IDF goes down, the other ones should be able to at least sort of cover for you while you get that one back up. But yeah, you can't run Ethernet forever. You have to put a booster every 300. I've seen it run to 400 feet because like in existing installs, but 300 feet is pretty much when you start to have issues, especially in, an enterprise mission critical setting. Oh, there's a response. I'm sorry. Oh no, that's almost certainly just a network distribution box. It will have a switch or two in it, plus terminations for the drops around the warehouse. Consider that the maximum length of Cat6 cable is 300 feet. Well, at least you guys know I'm not just spouting crap. It's not that hard to imagine running way longer than that from one end of the warehouse to another. Yep. So instead, they've probably run a fiber to this distribution rack. And from here, they're with 300 feet for copper to every point that needs it. Yep. Oh, makes way more sense now. I actually learned something. Thanks. Yeah, pretty much what I just said. Sorry. My friend made a file server? Why is it in quotes? Then asks me why I cannot access his files. What in the... Okay, all right, I see the logic. I respect the attempt. So you have a USB hub with an Ethernet port on it, and you have a bunch of USB drives, and you give it power and has an Ethernet port. So like, why isn't it communicating? And like, I know the answer, and you probably kind of sort of guessed at the answer, but this is why. The Ethernet port is just an interface. It'll hand out a MAC address, which is something at OSI layer 2, and just be like, hi, I'm an Ethernet port, and the Ethernet port in the other end of just that cable will go, cool, thanks. And it will note down the MAC address in the MAC address table. It won't give an IP address or internet protocol address or any sort of internet because the port can't do that. The computer handles all the IP stuff. That's OSI layer 3. There are 7 layers, just like a good dip. But when the thing you've plugged it into isn't smart at all and is just a plug, assumingly, I've seen Raspberry Pi Picos stuffed into tinier places, but assuming that's just a charger, you don't have anything to accept an IP address. You need like a little Raspberry Pi or something like that, that you could plug that in, but a Raspberry Pi has an Ethernet port on it. So like at that point, just plug all your flash drives into that. It's not, I see where you go. I see the logic. And honestly, if your friend is this curious about stuff, get them a Raspberry Pi, or maybe just like have them start networking their laptops together or something like that. Just, a little nudge, because curiosity, always good. Always encourage curiosity. But if all they wanted was just like, I just want to, because these files across the internet, I don't want to think about it anymore, then just don't bother. Wi-Fi signal strength. The egg cooker. When I was configuring a bunch of access points for a college dorm once, I think I had 48 of those in the tiniest office that used to be a filing room you've ever seen. And they were all on at the same time. I remember sending a picture to one of my coworkers being like, do you want to cook some eggs? Because like, I'm sure we have enough radiation power to do it. Not really. Your cell phone can put 16 times more energy out than a wireless access point. It's not as powerful as it looks, but it's still fun to talk about. Delicious cooler sludge. Chunky liquid I dreamed from the oh no. An AIO is an all-in-one cooler. It's the only type of liquid cooling I ever frack with because I don't, oh God, no. I don't have the patience for that stuff. But basically the idea is it's a sealed system with a big radiator and a block that goes on your CPU, and it does all the liquid cooling, but it's just sealed from the factory. You don't have to do anything. Unless something fails inside of it, and then you hear it failing. You'll hear little stuff floating around in it and stuff like that, because stuff rots over time. Like anything with liquid parts in it just is gonna degrade over time and is going to cause problems, which is why we don't use liquid cooling in servers, because no. Dad, my keyboard is glitching out. Why is it pink? Why is it pink or red? I don't want to ask questions because I don't want to know the answer to them. No, I'm gonna say it's G Fuel or something. Did you spill anything? No, it's just glitches out all of a sudden. I didn't do anything. Nope. My wife got me a rose. It was very pretty, but it was on a vase on my workbench desk, and I had a keyboard next to it, and I just elbowed that vase full of water and a rose directly into that keyboard, and it died. I kept the keyboard as a prop, but yeah, if you ever see me beat the crap out of a keyboard in any of my videos, that's the one. It's dead. It's okay. I'm not hurting a functional mechanical keyboard. I was just very dumb and clumsy. Opened up a cheap calculator today. Oh, we saw this to find out the solar strip. Yeah, the solar strip. We saw this before. Still makes me angry, but yeah, solar used to be in a decent amount of calculators. I hope it still is. But also with how power efficient we've gotten with chips and stuff, we could probably power one of these for like 10 years on a single coin cell. So I don't know. Speaks for itself. Is that a wireless access point in a bin on top of a pipe? Is this somewhere where they just like weren't allowed to drill or anything? So confused. The wire is very neatly run. I'll give them that. Friend spilled pickle juice on his brand new laptop. Oh, no. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, the stickers aren't even off yet. Or if you don't take the stickers off, the stickers aren't even peeling off yet. I think there are some dead pixels on this screen. Can you help me spot them? No, it looks perfectly fine to me. I actually, despite the fact that my vision is crap, I'm really sensitive to like screens being like slightly off. Like I have a tiny bit of light bleed on one of the monitors I bought like 10 years ago for 99 bucks, and it still bothers me to this day. Work in a hospital. I'm sorry. And this little fragile stick man of a nurse managed to do this. What in the cut? What were you shoving in there? Look, I mean, it's a charger in a public environment or like a work environment. I expect abuse. I don't expect Hulk smashing something directly through the front of it. An invention of my dad, completely functional. The supercharger. Okay, I wasn't gonna go into power delivery. That whole 5 volts thing I was talking about, okay, you can have 5 volts, 2.4 amps. Most devices will figure that out just fine. When you get into power delivery, your device actually has to request the amount of power that it needs. So it connects at a very safe voltage. It's a lot like power over Ethernet. A lot of devices do this. When a device can issue power digitally, it will do so at very low, class compliant, non-damaging rate. And then the device will get just enough power to respond with, hey, here's my specifications, here's what I can support, please give me this level of power. And the charger says, okay, thank you for the specs. I will now shut the port off and I will turn it on at the power level that you can support. And then that's how you get fast charging. Fast charging can take place all the way up to 20 volts. I think even higher for some other stuff. It's not just gonna dump 20 volts straight out the door because some devices would get damaged by that, like smaller earbuds and stuff like that. So your device has to be able to communicate with the charger. That's a brick charger. That's a giant DC transformer that does not care what's on the other end of it. And sure, if it puts out 5 volts at 4 amps, you'll get 5 volts at whatever device your device will maximally charge at. But it won't charge it any faster than 5 volts, 2.4 amps, or whatever your device supports. And also, it's not designed for that. You're not gonna have things like a thermal protection and overvolt protection. There's so many problems with this. You'll get a faster charge than just like the old iPhone little tiny brick chargers, but it's not gonna be a power delivery or anything like that. Keyboard switches stopped working. Had to pull a 5-minute craft. Those are momentary switches. I like that you have like the extended ones. There's a couple different heights you can get the momentary push buttons in. It's just a little tiny copper dome, and when you press it, the copper dome inverts and it touches the copper pad below it, and that's how you get a switch. But you can get the post as basically as tall as you need it so that you can have your circuit board lower or enclosures that support it. So like usually when you're starting out on electronics parts bin, you don't have these. Like this is somebody who's like messed around with a bunch of other stuff and like had to order these for a special reason or got them as part of another set and still had them lying around and was like, yeah, no, that's almost tall enough as my keys. That's hilarious. I love this. This makes me so happy. These things only happen on a Friday afternoon, right? I work night shift, so like I still have to deal with problems Friday, 10, 11 p.m. What in the... What? Did a mole rat come through? What the hell? Was somebody drilling through the wall? Okay, so to explain this, there's a conduit here. Usually conduits are metal, but not always. And it looks like somebody else was installing something and drilled straight through the conduit, shorting and cutting all of these Ethernet cables. Great stuff. Very fun. Lovely. That being said, this is why a lot of conduit is now run externally, because it's hard to see this kind of stuff. But not always. Sometimes architects, I have had many arguments with architects, and I'm just like, this is a basement level. Please just have exposed conduit so we can find it later and add stuff to it. We want the ceiling line to look good. I'm like, it is the basement in a restricted area. Nobody's supposed to be back there. If somebody complains about I'll make them blinder than me. The dumbest thing I've had to do this year. Well, it is only February. Oh, that's not that bad. Oh, that's fine. What are you cooling off? Oh, is that an SSD? I can't tell if it's a phone, an SSD, or like oh, sweet, we got an actual caption. Gen 4 NVMe, okay, that's a type of SSD. 4x4 drives, running at max speed, get really dangerously hot, like 85 degrees Celsius. The 10 gigabytes per second USB-C enclosure, this one had no cooling whatsoever, probably because they didn't expect you to be running them at full speed. I know that sounds stupid, but if you're expecting full speed, max speed all the time, you're looking for enterprise and commercial grade stuff. So I decided to make my own terrifying solution involving 120 volt cooling fan. Jesus, from freaking Radio Shack. Yeah, I miss Radio Shack. Jerry rigged to an unpolarized North American AC cable. No power cable is polarized. Oh, do you mean the plug? It's like, it's AC. It's always changing polarity. Anyways, a very thick thermal pad. You spent a thermal pad on this. Wow, okay. And an HP ProLiant G6 server CPU, a heatsink. Okay, I just like that looks a little familiar. It's utterly hideous. It works, probably an OSHA violation. Only if you have like exposed wires, just heat shrink some stuff in it. It sounds like a jetliner. Good, that means it's working. But the drive runs 28 degrees Celsius cooler. That is a success. Well done. This is basically what I would have done. I would have avoided the 120 volt because like anytime I'm dealing with just like exposed wires and around a bench, especially if somebody else is around me, I stick to 5 or 12 volts because I was like, I'm fine with you sticking your hands in my like work and getting like slightly burned. I'm not okay with you being shocked and dead. This is not actually fine, but this is pretty good ingenuity. Good job. Also, better enclosure. Like you've got server spare parts sitting around. You should probably focus on a better enclosure with some actual thermal displacement. But it works fine, and I could close it good enough until last night. Oh no, spicy pillow. Oh no, it's a hinge. Well, that's not the user's fault. That's HP's fault. It's not just HP, but there are a lot of HP laptops that have hinges mounted to the underside of a plastic housing for the base. So over time, the hinges are too tight and they will warp the plastic up, and eventually the plastic will give out because plastic gets brittle over time and the hinge is made out of metal. So because they didn't frame the entire hinge and monitor in metal like a normal sane laptop builder would, eventually there are hundreds, thousands of laptops with these broken hinges now. Let's use duct tape to cover up the camera. I mean, I know a decent number of laptops that had just gaff tape on them. I don't think that's a terrible idea. I would request the little, $6 pack of 5 like magnetic camera covers if you would like them. I think they should be built into all laptops. Dells and ThinkPads both have the little camera covers that slide over, and Razer at least has a little LED, lets you know there's actually power going to it. I don't understand why it's not a thing. But yeah, if you won't provide that from your IT department, or can't, the duct tape, there's no reason to have the camera constantly like uncovered. What you can do, and I've seen this done once, and it actually works pretty well. If you get gaff tape, you fold it over itself so you make like a non-sticky flap. You put the tail of that flap on the back of your lid, tape that down, and then you have a little camera cover that flips up, and then you can flip it open for meetings and then flip it back. There you go. And it doesn't mess up the camera.